Welcome back to the UFO Forums Podcast. Before we launch in, I just want to invite you to like and subscribe to the feed.
It really does help.
It really does. It helps the show grow and helps us reach more people who are just as interested in these mysteries as we are.
It sort of creates a community of curiosity, which is exactly what we need for today's topic. Because, frankly, we are going to need all the brain power we can get to untangle this one.
You aren't kidding. Today, we are doing a deep dive into a stack of source material that represents one of the most baffling, just, complete paradoxes in American history.
A true historical enigma.
We were traveling back to the early morning hours of February 25, 1942.
The Battle of Los Angeles, a night where the city of angels went to war against.
Well, that is the question, isn't it? What were they shooting at?
Exactly. And I really want to set the scene for you right now. Just try to picture this. It is 3 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's pitch black because the entire city, this massive, sprawling metropolis, is under a strict wartime blackout. Suddenly, the sirens start wailing. That low, mournful drone, I mean, you hear that and it signals imminent death from above. It's a terrifying sound.
Absolutely terrifying. And then the sky just, it erupts. And we aren't talking about a few warning shots here.
No, this isn't a couple of pot shots.
We are talking about 1,400 rounds of heavy anti-aircraft artillery screaming into the darkness over a populated city.
It just creates this image of total, absolute chaos. You have these massive searchlights sweeping the clouds, all trying to converge on targets, and then shrapnel from their own guns is raining back down on the streets.
So for the Army on the ground that night, this was a battle, a literal kinetic battle against a very real aerial intruder.
No question in their minds, they were engaged with an enemy.
But here's where the paradox kicks in. To the Navy, the very next day, it was a false alarm.
Just a case of jittery nerves, that was the official quote.
Jittery nerves. And to the history books, it's just this confusing, murky mix of war panic and unexplained phenomena that has never, ever been fully resolved.
It's really one of the only events in history where you have literally thousands of eyewitnesses on the ground. Thousands of pounds of munitions fired, actual casualties on the ground. And yet, more than 80 years later, we have absolutely zero consensus on what was actually in the sky.
It's incredible. So let's talk about the stack you brought to the table today. What are we working with to try and solve this thing?
We have a really fascinating, and I have to say, deeply conflicting mix of sources. It's like we're looking at 2 different events.
Okay.
First, we're looking at the standard stuff, the official historical records, the research starters from places like EBSCO and military.com. This gives us the baseline facts, the who, what, where of the incident.
An agreed upon timeline.
Exactly. We also have the contemporary newspaper accounts, specifically from the Los Angeles Times archives. This lets us see what the public was being told in the heat of the moment.
So that gives us the official narrative, or at least the public-facing one. But I see some other things in the pile here that look a little less official.
We do. We've got detailed military history logs, specifically the Coast Artillery history and the Army Air Force's own records. These give us that minute-by-minute ticking clock of the engagement from the soldier's perspective.
Okay, so that's the view from the ground.
Right. But then we have the majestic documents.
And these are the wild cards.
To put it mildly, these are leaked, and I have to stress, highly controversial government memos allegedly from the absolute top brass. We're talking FDR, General George C. Marshall, Eisenhower.
Wow.
And if these documents are real, they suggest an explanation involving, and I'm quoting directly from one of them, interplanetary origin.
Interplanetary origin. That is a heavy phrase. And finally, what's this last one?
To keep us grounded, hopefully, we have a photographic analysis from a source called Air-Minded. And it takes a very hard scientific look at that famous photograph of the event. You know the one.
Oh, the searchlights all converging on that saucer-looking thing.
That's the one. So our mission today is to try and sift through this fog of war and this very strange paper trail of secrets. We need to try and answer the question, was this a weather balloon? Was it a sophisticated Japanese psychological ops campaign?
Or, as those memos suggest, was this the first time the United States military knowingly engaged an extraterrestrial object?
That's the core question we have to tackle.
Okay. To even begin to understand that night, I don't think we can just drop into 3 a.m. on February 25th. It doesn't work without the context.
No, you absolutely have to understand the psychology of the moment.
So this is section 1 of our outline. The powder keg.
Yeah.
Los Angeles on the absolute brink.
And powder keg is the perfect description. You have to put yourself back in their shoes. This is February 1942.
Just weeks after Pearl Harbor.
Less than 3 months. The country had been violently dragged into a global conflict, and the Pacific Fleet, the thing that was supposed to protect the West Coast, had been decimated. It was at the bottom of the ocean.
So the West Coast felt completely and totally exposed.
Utterly. People today might think of the U.S. mainland as this sort of untouchable fortress, but in 1942, that was not the feeling at all.
Not at all.
There was a genuine, palpable belief that the Imperial Japanese Navy was going to land on the beaches of California at any moment. There were rumors of fleets just over the horizon.
And the source material highlights something really critical here that I think a lot of people forget. The fear wasn't just hypothetical. The mainland had already been breached.
This is the key detail. This is what primed the pump for the whole event. We tend to think the war stayed in Hawaii or in Europe, but it didn't.
So what happened?
Just one day prior to the Battle of Los Angeles on February 23rd, a Japanese submarine, the I-17, surfaced off the coast of Santa Barbara, right near the Elwood oil field.
They actually surfaced and attacked.
They surfaced, manned their deck gun, and started shelling an American oil refinery. Now, militarily, the damage was minimal. They hit a derrick, a pump house. It was more of a nuisance attack.
But psychological.
Psychologically, it was a nuclear bomb. It was absolute proof that the enemy wasn't thousands of miles away. They were right here. They were right off the beach, close enough to shell civilian infrastructure.
That changes everything. It's not an abstract threat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So when people in LA looked out at the Pacific Ocean on the night of the 24th, they weren't just seeing water.
No, they were seeing a hiding spot for the enemy. They were imagining periscopes. The fear was immediate, and it was real, and the military absolutely knew it. Our sources highlight a naval intelligence warning that was issued on February 24th, the day before the battle.
A specific warning. What did it say?
It was incredibly specific. It wasn't just be on alert. They advised that an attack on the California coast could be expected within the next 10 hours.
Wow. 10 hours. So everyone is already sleeping with one eye open, if they're even sleeping.
If they were sleeping at all. And then on top of that official warning, you add the visual triggers. There were widespread reports of flares and blinking lights being seen near defense plants earlier that evening.
So sabotage fears.
Huge sabotage fears. The military was on high alert, believing spies on the ground were signaling the location of targets to an incoming fleet or bombers.
It's just layer upon layer of tension.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes the technology.
Yeah.
The radar.
This is the spark that lights the fuse. Army radars, which were still relatively new technology at this time, picked up a target. A solid target, 120 miles west of Los Angeles, heading east.
And these operators, they were trained, right? They could tell the difference between atmospheric noise and a real target.
They were trained to distinguish noise from solid returns. And they were getting solid returns. They weren't just seeing ghosts on a screen. The instruments were registering something physical moving steadily toward the coast.
So let's recap the powder keg. You have the deep psychological trauma of Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
You have the very real, very recent submarine attack just up the coast.
The day before.
You have a specific intelligence warning saying attack in 10 hours. You have reports of signal flares on the ground. And now you have a radar blip closing in.
The tension is at an absolute breaking point. And at 2:15 a.m. on February 25th, that tension finally snapped.
Okay, let's walk through the timeline of the chaos itself. This is section 2. The battle unfolds.
It starts at 2:15 a.m. The coastal batteries of the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade are put on green alert.
What does green alert mean exactly?
It means get the guns ready, we're about to fire. It's the final stage before opening up. The crews are at their stations, ammunition's ready, they're just waiting for the order.
And then the lights go out.
At 2:21 a.m., the blackout is ordered, and this is a total blackout. Imagine the sprawling lights of Los Angeles, glittering Hollywood, the coastline, the valley, all of it just vanishes into the dark. A city of millions just disappears.
That image is chilling. And then, for almost an entire hour, nothing happens.
Just waiting in the dark, listening. The radar operators are tracking this target as it gets closer and closer to the coast. The tension must have been unbearable.
And then the order comes.
At 3:16 a.m., the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade receives the order to open fire.
And according to the sources, they didn't just, pop off a few warning shots to see what would happen.
No. The description in one of the military histories is that the air over Los Angeles erupted like a volcano.
That is not an exaggeration. We are talking about 1,440 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition These are heady shells.
They're 12.8-pound shells designed to take down high-altitude bombers. They fly up to a set altitude, and then they detonate, throwing shrapnel everywhere in a wide radius.
Plus, they unleash thousands and thousands of rounds of .50 caliber machine gun fire. The tracers from those would have been lighting up the entire sky.
Just picture that. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. You're a civilian. You're in your bed. Suddenly, the sky is filled with these orange tracers streaking upward. You have searchlights, 9 of them, according to the logs, lancing through the clouds, all converging on objects in the sky. The noise must have been absolutely deafening.
It sounds like the end of the world.
It was chaos. And in that chaos, we run into the biggest problem with this entire event: the eyewitness testimony. The Army Air Force's history logs are just fascinating here because they are completely and utterly contradictory.
What were people actually seeing up there?
Well, it depends entirely on who you ask and where they were standing. Some witnesses reported seeing swarms of planes, like a full-on invasion force, maybe 20 or 30 aircraft.
Which would match the fear of a Japanese carrier strike. They'd be expecting a large formation.
Exactly. That fits the preconceived notion of what the attack should look like. But others saw something completely different.
Like what?
Many others saw a single, large, slow-moving object. One report, which is very detailed, says it took a full 30 minutes to move just 25 miles.
That is incredibly slow for an aircraft, even by 1942 standards.
It's basically impossible. A Zero fighter or a bomber would literally stall and fall out of the sky at that speed. It's moving at, 50 miles an hour?
That sounds much more like a blimp or a balloon.
Right, and some people did report seeing exactly that. They saw what looked like a balloon with a red flare attached to it, just sort of drifting.
But then you have others seeing something else entirely.
You do. You have some gunners tracking what they believe are formations at 12,000 feet, while different gun batteries are tracking separate objects at 20,000 feet. It's just a complete mess of data.
It's like everyone was looking at a different sky.
It really is. But here's the key anomaly. This is the detail that makes the Battle of Los Angeles so enduring as a mystery. Despite 1,400 explosions in the sky, despite these swarms of planes, no bombs were dropped on the city.
And even more bizarrely, nothing fell out of the sky.
Exactly. No aircraft were shot down. Not a single one. Just think about the physics of that for a second.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
You put 1,400 rounds of high-explosive shrapnel into the air, all aimed at a slow-moving target, and you hit nothing. Not a wing, not an engine, not a piece of fuselage.
It feels impossible. I mean, if it was a squadron of Japanese planes, surely one of them would have been clipped. The odds are just against them all getting through that untouched.
And if it was a blimp or a balloon, it would have been shredded. It would have been confetti.
So this leads us to the morning after. The sun comes up. The guns are silent. Section 3. Casualties in confusion. Because while the battle in the sky might have been against a phantom, the damage on the ground was very, very real.
Yeah, we have to remind ourselves that this wasn't a movie. This wasn't a harmless light show. Real people got hurt.
How many casualties were there?
In total, 5 people died that night. 3 were killed in traffic accidents during the blackout. People were driving in a panic, without headlights, and there were terrible collisions.
And the other 2?
2 people died of heart attacks, which were attributed directly to the stress and the shock of the hours-long bombardment.
That's just tragic. And the property damage wasn't insignificant either, was it?
No, not at all. Those 1,400 shells, what goes up must come down. Shrapnel rained all over the city for hours. It damaged homes, it smashed car windshields, it punched holes in roofs.
And I read one source that said a cow was killed.
That's right. A cow was killed in a field by falling shrapnel. And in what has to be one of the most bizarre details, one unexploded 12.8-pound shell actually landed right in a civilian's bed.
Can you even imagine? You jump out of bed because the world sounds like it's ending, and an artillery shell lands on your pillow.
It just really highlights the incredible danger of friendly fire when you're firing that much ordnance over a populated city.
So as the smoke cleared and the sun came up, the official government disconnect began, and this is where the conspiracy theories really start to find their footing.
This is the moment, the he said, she said of the United States government.
It was immediate, and it was very public. What happened?
Well, on one side, you have the Navy. The Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, holds a press conference and calls the whole thing a false alarm. He attributes it entirely, and this is the quote again, to jittery nerves.
So he's basically telling the people of Los Angeles, you hallucinated the whole thing, the stress got to you.
Which, as you can imagine, did not go over well with the people who had shrapnel in their living rooms.
I can't imagine it did.
But then, on the complete other side, you have the Army. The Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, holds his own press briefing, and he claims that somewhere between 1 and 5 unidentified airplanes were there.
Wait, so the Navy says nothing was there, and the Army says there were up to 5 planes? That is a massive, fundamental disconnect between two branches of the same military about an event that just happened.
It's a huge gap. You can't reconcile those two statements. And Stimson's theories about what those planes were, they were all over the place. He was clearly just grasping at straws.
What did you suggest?
He suggested maybe they were commercial planes that had been secretly commandeered by enemy agents, and they were flying from secret airfields in Mexico or somewhere in rural California.
Secret fields in Mexico. That sounds like a B-movie plot.
It does. Then he suggested maybe they were light planes that had been launched from Japanese submarines offshore.
And the public wasn't buying any of this.
Not for a second. The LA Times published this scathing editorial basically demanding answers, and their logic was perfectly sound, they ask. If there were no planes, as the Navy claims, then why this display of expensive, dangerous incompetence? Why fire 1,400 rounds at absolutely nothing?
A very fair question.
But they continued, if there were planes, as the Army claims, then why were the anti-aircraft guns so wildly ineffective? How did 1,400 rounds completely miss up to 5 planes?
It's lose-lose for the military. Either they're incompetent at identifying threats, or they're incompetent at shooting them down. There's no good answer there.
Exactly. It paints a picture of chaos and confusion at the highest levels. And just to close the loop on the enemy aircraft theory after the war, the Japanese government was questioned about this and stated unequivocally that they did not fly any planes over Los Angeles at that time.
So it wasn't the Japanese. Which leaves us with what? Nerves and a weather balloon.
Well, before we get to the really strange stuff, we have to talk about the one piece of hard evidence we have. Section 4. The photographic evidence.
Ah, yes. The famous photo. If you Google Battle of Los Angeles, this is the image that comes up. It is incredibly dramatic.
It's an iconic image.
You see all these searchlight beams converging on this pale, almost saucer-like shape in the dead center of the sky, and there are these little explosions, these blobs all around it. It looks undeniably like a classic UFO.
It was published in the LA Times on February 26, 1942. And for decades, ufologists have pointed to this photo as the smoking gun, the proof. But we need to take a closer look at the analysis from our source, Air-Minded.
They sort of act as the scientific reality check on this one, don't they?
They do. And the very first thing they point out is the retouching of the photograph.
Right. Photo manipulation wasn't invented with Photoshop. This was standard practice back then.
It was absolutely standard for newspapers. In the 1940s, newspaper printing was a very low-fidelity process. To make a photograph pop on cheap newsprint, photo editors would routinely paint directly onto the negatives with white and black paint to increase the contrast.
So they would whiten the searchlight beams to make them stand out and darken the sky around them.
Precisely. And the image that most people see today, the one that's all over the internet, is that heavily retouched version. The original negative, which still exists, is much, much vaguer and less defined.
So the distinct saucer shape might just be an artifact of a photo editor's paintbrush?
It could be. Or, as the Air-Minded analysis suggests, it might just be a cloud.
A cloud. How does that work?
The physics argument here is actually pretty strong. When you have multiple powerful searchlight beams that all converge on a single point on a cloud deck, the light doesn't just reflect back down like it would from a solid metallic object.
What does it do?
It diffuses horizontally through the water vapor. It scatters. And that scattering effect creates a flat, illuminated shape within the cloud that can look very solid.
Okay, I can see that. So what about the blobs around it? People say those are smaller escort ships or something.
The analysis suggests that those are almost certainly just the puffs of black smoke from the detonating anti-aircraft shells, which are then being illuminated by those same searchlight beams.
So you have a shell explode, it creates a puff of smoke, and a split second later a searchlight beam hits it and lights it up.
And it looks like a glowing orb for a moment.
Okay, so let's just lay out the skeptical case here based on what we've talked about so far. We have a very nervous city.
Extremely nervous.
A weather balloon is launched, which we know happened. That balloon, or maybe just a weird cloud formation, triggers the primitive radar. The shooting starts. The chaos of the explosions and the smoke and the searchlight beams creates more phantom targets for other gunners to shoot at.
A feedback loop of panic.
And the famous saucer in the photograph is just an optical illusion caused by searchlights hitting a cloud. Case closed.
It would be a very neat and tidy explanation if it weren't for the memos.
And here is where it gets really, really interesting. This is Section 5. the majestic twist.
Up until this point, we have been looking at public records, newspaper articles, declassified military histories. But the source material for this deep dive also includes the majestic documents.
And we have to reiterate, these are disputed, their provenance is controversial, but for the sake of this deep dive, we are going to treat them as documents whose content needs to be analyzed.
We have to, because if these memos are real, then everything we just said about clouds and nerves and weather balloons is an intentional cover story.
So let's start with the big one. The memo from General George C. Marshall to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It's dated February 27, 1942.
That's just 2 days after the incident.
And Marshall is the Army Chief of Staff. He is the top guy in the Army.
Correct. And in this memo, he directly links unidentified flying object crashes to the Los Angeles air raid.
Wait, crashes? Plural, as in this wasn't the first one.
The wording is ambiguous, but the implications are huge. He then goes on to write about, and again I'm quoting, atomic secrets learned from study of celestial devices.
Celestial devices. That is not the language you use for a weather balloon. That is incredibly specific language.
No, it's not. And then it gets even more explicit. There's another memo from March 5, 1942, just a week later. Marshall writes to FDR again. He states that a Rear Admiral Anderson recovered an unidentified airplane off the coast of California in connection with the air raid.
Recovered. So something did go down into the ocean.
According to this memo, yes. And Marshall does not mince words from this point on. He writes that Army G2 intelligence has come to the determination that the mystery airplanes are, quote, in fact, not earthly and are likely of interplanetary origin.
Interplanetary origin. In 1942, that's 5 full years before the Roswell incident.
Exactly. This would predate the entire public history of the UFO phenomenon. And the memo goes on to authorize the creation of a special intelligence unit to handle this. It was to be called the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, or IPU.
So if we follow this thread, the Battle of Los Angeles wasn't a false alarm at all. It was a successful military engagement.
In this narrative, yes.
We, or something, shot something down. It crashed into the ocean just off the coast. The Navy recovered it. And then General Marshall had to make the call to the president and say, "Sir, this isn't Japanese. This is from space."
And if that's true, it would perfectly explain the bizarre public disconnect between the Navy and the Army.
How so?
The Navy Secretary, Frank Knox, calling it a false alarm becomes the perfect cover story. Nothing to see here, folks, just some jittery nerves. Meanwhile, his own branch of the military is secretly dragging a crashed alien craft out of the Pacific Ocean.
It's the perfect camouflage. If you say it was aliens, everyone looks. If you say we were idiots and shot at a cloud, everyone looks away in embarrassment.
It's brilliant misdirection.
There's another memo here from 1944. This one is supposedly from FDR himself.
Yes. February 22nd, 1944, the president writes a double top-secret memo on the subject of non-terrestrial science and technology.
That phrase again, non-terrestrial. It's consistent.
He discusses in very blunt terms the reality that our planet is not the only one harboring intelligent life. The implication in the text is that the U.S. had recovered a craft. This memo also seems to reference a separate earlier crash in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in 1941.
So they might have had 2 by this point.
It's implied.
Yeah.
And the memo is about the problem of trying to figure out how to apply non-terrestrial know-how to the ongoing war effort.
Just imagine the pressure of that situation. You're in the middle of fighting the Nazis and the Japanese Empire, and suddenly you have in your possession technology that could potentially win the war overnight. But you have absolutely no idea how to turn it on.
Or you worry that if you try to use it, it might backfire spectacularly. FDR actually notes in the memo that he worries this new science could threaten or complicate the atomic bomb program at Los Alamos.
So it shows a president juggling conventional warfare, the dawn of the nuclear age, and apparently reverse engineering alien technology all at the same time.
It's a staggering thought.
And this connects directly to our next section, Section 6, connecting 1942 to Roswell. Because usually people think the modern UFO phenomenon starts in 1947.
Right. Kenneth Arnold sighting the Roswell crash. That's the public starting point in 1947. But these documents suggest that 1947 wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment the dam of secrecy finally broke.
Let's look at this document, Twining's White Hot Report. It's from September 1947.
General Nathan Twining. He was the head of Air Materiel Command. This report is a retroactive analysis of what they call lenticular aerodyne objects.
Lenticular meaning lens-shaped, flying saucers.
Exactly. The report states unequivocally that these objects are real, not visionary. It claims they are not U.S. made, not German, and not Russian. It even mentions the recovery of bodies.
Bodies.
And it uses this absolutely fascinating phrase. It describes a symbiotic relationship between operator and the functions of the aerodyne.
Symbiotic. That sounds like the ship and the pilot are somehow connected, biologically or mentally.
Like a direct neural interface, which in 1947 is a mind-blowing concept. We barely had room-sized computers. The idea of a machine that you control directly with your mind or your biology is pure science fiction, unless, of course, they were looking at one on a table.
And then from that same year, we have the Oppenheimer-Einstein draft. June 1947, two of the smartest human beings on the planet.
This document is almost unbelievable. It's titled Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies, and it deals with something they call extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBEs.
And it's not written as a what-if scenario. It's not a thought experiment.
No. It's written as a policy paper. It treats the presence of unidentified and non-terrestrial spacecraft as a de facto reality that is accepted by the military and scientific leadership. It's discussing the urgent need for something they call cosmic international law.
Cosmic international law, what does that even mean?
They're discussing how to handle potential colonization, how to handle legal rights of celestial states. It implies that by the summer of 1947, the smartest minds in the U.S. government had moved way past the question of, do they exist? And were already grappling with, how do we legislate for them?
So we have two completely different, mutually exclusive histories sitting here on the table. This brings us to Section 7, Synthesis and the Conflict of Evidence.
We do. We have narrative A and narrative B, and they cannot both be true.
Let's lay them out. Narrative A is the standard, historical, skeptical version.
The war nerves theory.
Right. A frightened city, fresh off the trauma of Pearl Harbor and a local submarine attack, sees a stray weather balloon. The fog of war kicks in. Everyone starts shooting at everything and nothing.
The UFO in the famous photo is just a trick of light on a cloud. The contradictory eyewitness reports are a classic example of mass panic. The whole thing was just a tragic, expensive mistake.
It's a clean, logical narrative. It fits what we know about human psychology and the chaos of war. It requires no leaps of faith.
And then there is narrative B, the majestic narrative.
In this version, the radar tracked a real physical object. The coastal artillery fired at a real, technologically advanced craft. That craft was damaged and went down into the ocean where the Navy recovered it.
And the top brass of the United States Marshal, Twining, President Roosevelt, spent the next 5 years secretly studying celestial devices and trying to understand atomic secrets from another world.
How on earth do we reconcile these two realities?
It is incredibly difficult, but you can see how they fit together if you assume one is the cover for the other. If the Marshall Memo is real, then Secretary Knox's false alarm statement wasn't a mistake or an embarrassment. It was a brilliant and necessary piece of strategic deception.
It used the public's own potential embarrassment. Oh, we were just scared and shot at a cloud, to hide the single most significant discovery in all of human history.
It's the perfect camouflage. Nobody wants to look too closely at an event that makes them look foolish, so everyone just agrees to move on.
Conversely, if the weather balloon theory is true, and we have to remember, the sources from FOX6 and military.com do strongly support a meteorological balloon being launched at 1:01 a.m. that morning.
A fact that fits the slow-moving object description perfectly.
Then the majestic documents have to be elaborate, incredibly detailed fabrications designed to mislead researchers.
But even that simple weather balloon theory has some holes, right? The waste of ammunition criticism from the LA Times still stands.
It does. If it was a simple balloon, 1,400 high explosive rounds should have brought it down in the first few seconds of the engagement.
The fact that the object, whatever it was, apparently withstood that hour-long barrage and then simply moved away, that's a data point that strongly fuels the non-terrestrial fire.
Unless, of course, in the dark and the panic, they were all just missing, which is also plausible.
Entirely plausible. Gunners get scared, they make mistakes. It was night, there was smoke everywhere.
So, after all of this, where does this leave us? What can we say for sure?
It leaves us with a choice of realities. There is no middle ground here.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up in our conclusion. We have a night of absolute terror over a major American city.
We have 1,400 artillery shells fired. We have 5 civilian deaths on the ground. And we have a central mystery that hasn't faded one bit in over 80 years.
We have a photograph that shows either a cloud or a saucer. We have an official government that is publicly saying it was just nerves, while allegedly privately, writing top-secret memos about interplanetary origins.
It's the ultimate fork in the road.
So what is your final takeaway from this stack? If you had to distill it down to one core idea, what would it be?
I think, for me, regardless of whether it was a balloon from Earth or a spacecraft from Mars, the event demonstrated something profound about the human condition in wartime. It showed how quickly war nerves can create a tangible reality of their own.
Oh, so?
The sky over Los Angeles erupted like a volcano against an enemy that, to the people on the ground pulling the triggers, was absolutely 100% real. Whether that enemy was ultimately made of metal or made of fear, the reaction, the death, the destruction on the ground, it was exactly the same.
That is a powerful point. Fear can manifest its own monsters. The physical reality of the threat almost becomes secondary to the perception of the threat.
It can, but those memos, man, they linger. They're hard to just dismiss.
They really are. And that leads me to my final provocative thought for you, the listener. And this is something to chew on. If, and it's a big if, but if the Marshall Memo is authentic, if the United States military did in fact recover an unidentified airplane of interplanetary origin off the coast of California in March of 1942, where is it now? And maybe more importantly, that FDR memo mentioned applying that technology to the war effort. Did we? Was that recovered craft the secret catalyst for the unbelievable technological boom of the 20th century? The transistor, lasers, fiber optics, all the things that came so quickly after the war.
Or is it still sitting in a crate in a hangar somewhere, waiting for us to finally figure out that symbiotic interface?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. This was a wild, wild ride through 1942.
It's always a pleasure to get lost in the fog of war.
If you want to read those memos for yourself, and believe me, they are worth a read. Whatever you think of them, check the sources in our show notes.
And remember to question what you see in the sky, and maybe what you read in the history books, too.
We'll see you next time.